is your client willing to testify before the Judiciary Committee publicly and tell this story?
She is. She's willing to do whatever it takes to get her story forth, yes.
Yeah.
Wow, that's the attorney for Christine Ford moments ago telling the Today Show that Judge Brett Kavanaugh's accuser is willing to go to Capitol Hill and tell her story publicly. Joining us now, senior member of the Judiciary Committee, Senate Democratic Whip Dick Durbin of Illinois. And Joe, this is pretty important breaking news, given the position that Democrats and Republicans are in now.
Right, she's ready to testify. Senator, where should this nomination go next?
Well, the first things we've got to consider is there is a scheduled vote on Thursday on this nomination. That needs to be stopped and postponed until we get to the bottom of this. It was agreed to by the Republicans only on a partisan vote last Thursday in the committee. And I'll tell you, Joe, what they did was, for the first time, they basically backed away from the requirement that the minority had to agree to limit debate. We did not agree. And so that's the first thing. The second thing is to really discuss how we approach this now. We cannot ignore it. It is an important issue. We need to have a fair hearing for both Judge Kavanaugh and certainly for Dr. Ford.
Jonathan Turley was on earlier this morning. He, as well as the Wall Street Journal editorial page, have questioned the timing of this information coming out. Democrats had the information for 2 months and held on to it until after the hearings were all but over. What would you say to Jonathan Turley? What would you say to conservative critics who suggest that Democrats held this information for as long as they could and then released it at the end of last week to delay the vote?
I know a little bit more about that than Mr. Turley, and let me tell you, what happened was Senator Feinstein received this letter. She received it from Congresswoman Eshoo, who passed it along, who's a friend and certainly credible person, but Congresswoman Eshoo did not attest to its credibility or accuracy. And then the very next day, after Senator Feinstein received this information, she called Dr. Ford. And at that point, Dr. Ford said, I do not want to go public with my own name on this. She branded this as confidential in the conversation, or the communication. And so Senator Feinstein was in a dilemma. She had important allegations, but she had a person who did not want to become public with them. She worked with her, continued to talk to her, at one point to her attorney, trying to figure out the right thing to do, the fair thing to do for this woman who alleges she was a victim of this episode. So I think Senator Feinstein did what she could under the circumstances, and as it evolved, Dr. Ford stepped up and said, I want to come public and explain what happened and to defend myself against my critics. So I don't think Senator Feinstein's culpable. I think she did the right thing.
With all the questions swirling around, could you help us with the timeline? When did Senator Feinstein first get a hold of this letter and learn of the allegations? When did you first learn of them?
Well, I first heard about them about 9 days ago, when I got a call from another member of the committee who had said that the word was out, that there was a story involving these allegations. In terms of Senator Feinstein, I don't want to say exactly which date she received them because I'm not 100% certain, but I do know that she made, the day after, called Dr. Ford directly, took them seriously, but also wanted to honor her request that it be confidential. Of course, I understand Senator Feinstein's position. You don't want to victimize Dr. Ford in this process. You want to be fair with her, and it took time for her to reach a point where she wanted to become public. This morning's statement that she's willing to testify, I really think puts the burden on us to get to the bottom of it and to really show our respect for due process on the Senate Judiciary Committee.
Senator, what are your concerns about the political ramifications of a situation like this? It's come up so late in the game. Her story, apparently you all were aware of it for several months. And, you know, there's a lot of reasons Brett Kavanaugh, perhaps if you're a Democrat, should not be confirmed. But this could become a brutal situation where this woman, her life is torn apart. And Democrats will be blamed for playing political games. I mean, can you see the concern, the risk there?
Well, let me say, Mika, the bottom line is this. We waited on Dr. Ford to reach this point where she was willing to come forward. I mean, respectful as Senator Feinstein was, and I'm glad she was, of her request that it be confidential. But now she has decided to, come forward to the American people and explain her side of the story. In terms of the timing and why we're slowing this down, you mentioned earlier in the show, we do remember Merrick Garland. We remember a Supreme Court vacancy that's set for 400 days because the Republicans refused to even meet with Merrick Garland, let alone give him a hearing. This is a fast-track effort on Brett Kavanaugh. Remember, they held back hundreds of thousands of documents related to his service in the White House, 35 months when he was staff secretary to President George W. Bush. We didn't receive a document in that regard. They are trying to fast-track this to get it done before the election, and it's obvious. If we take another week or two, whatever, to get this whole episode to the point where we understand what happened, that is not going to be an unusual or unacceptable delay as far as I'm concerned.
Casey.
Senator Durbin, good to see you this morning. There has been some early preliminary discussion, and Senator Graham alluded to this in his statement, that they could potentially have Dr. Ford testify as soon as tomorrow to try and keep their planned Thursday vote on track. What is your take on that potential timeline? Do you think it's possible that the committee could hear testimony from her on a timeline that was that fast?
There's nothing sacred about this next Thursday vote. This was manufactured by the Republicans to move it quickly. I don't know if it takes a matter of days or weeks to get this done, but certainly there are a limited number of people who could be called in on this matter. Let's do it the right way. Let's not rush to either bury it or to reach judgment on it without taking some time to do it in a fair way. This is the Senate Judiciary Committee. We're talking about a lifetime appointment to the highest court in the land of a Supreme Court justice who could be the deciding vote for a generation or more. Is it worth an extra week or two? For goodness sakes, of course it is.
Yep. You don't think there's any serious, significant chance that this is not just going to play out over the course of weeks, right? I mean, there's no chance that this woman can be rushed to Washington on short notice over the course of the next couple of days. You just on the minority and even on the majority, people are going to want time to prepare. This becomes an attenuated process, even in the most. Even the most concise version of this process is a weeks-long process.
Well, the Senate is in control of the Republicans, Mitch McConnell and Senator Grassley on the committee.
Right.
And if they look like they're being unfair to Dr. Ford at this point, it's going to create a backlash. Yeah. We were talking earlier about the Clarence Thomas, Anita Hill matter. I was in the House, not the Senate at the time. It became an amazing, emotional, national story in a hurry. The question is, the bottom line, will the Republicans treat this matter fairly?
You know Senator McConnell pretty well. He's done some pretty ruthless things procedurally in the past, including, as you pointed out, on Judge Garland. Just knowing his psyche, knowing the things that animate him, is there a chance that he just says, I don't care, I'm going to try to ram this thing through?
I think it's a serious mistake if he does, not only in terms of fairness and justice, but the political consequences would be grave.
So, Senator, let's fast forward that there is going to be this hearing. How do you or any of these men probe her, poke her, investigate her without looking dastardly, without looking like you're piling on a victim? I don't know how I don't know how they even go about it. If I'm any of you guys at this point, I just almost want it to go away because I wouldn't know how to do it.
Well, I think you're right. You made that point earlier. How would you cross-examine Dr. Ford under these circumstances? But however the hearing takes place, there has to be a feeling afterwards that we were fair to her and fair to Judge Kavanaugh at the same time. I mean, that is what we're striving for, and certainly rushing it through or ignoring it, those are unacceptable.
All right, Senator Dick Durbin, thank you very much. Thanks for being on this morning. And still ahead, Michael Cohen, Michael Flynn, and Paul Manafort are all flipping on the president. Turns out billionaire donors are starting to flip on Trump, too, by donating to Democrats over Republicans. They say money talks. Are Republicans listening? We'll be right back.
Thanks for checking out MSNBC on YouTube, and make sure you subscribe to stay up to date on the day's biggest stories. And you can click on any of the videos around us to watch more from Morning Joe and MSNBC. Thanks so much for watching.